Hi, this is Elena, and this video today is about how to navigate your feelings, your emotions that show up. Emotions are your compass, and there is no way we can change that. The compass, where that leads? This is the interesting question. This compass is about finding yourself, exploring yourself, seeking your truth, seeking your alignment, creating your alignment. And your feelings, your emotions that show up are the compass that is leading you step by step to that inner alignment. Now let's decipher a bit what is going on with feelings, how they show up, why they show up. There are many reasons and many ways, levels and layers that an emotion shows up. And it's not about stopping that feeling from showing up. It's about learning how to use it, how to navigate it, to understand it, and actually acknowledge it. Most of the times we have subtle emotions that show up, we have more intense emotions that show up, we have a huge spectrum of emotions, intensity and depth. It is up to you to pay attention to what the capacity, the intensity of the emotion, why it shows up, and how I can navigate this and why it shows up. Again, I'm gonna say that because every emotion, depending on why it shows up, how it shows up, the intensity or the depth, if it is connected to a past memory, if it is connected to something that you are called to follow now as intuitive feeling, as your purpose, as your calling, it shows you always something else, something different. And this is where become the master of ourselves. We talk about accession. Accession has this as an important step to master our feelings, our emotions, to understand them, to integrate the wisdom and the knowledge they have to offer. And how we do that? We start with, first of all, leveling, putting a level on the emotion. How deeply angry am I? What is the level of anger I'm facing with now? Is this something repetitive that keeps happening with this specific person or this similar situation with different people? And what does it try to tell me? One thing I figured out after a long of time with processing feelings, with helping and guiding others in a similar process of how to deal with their feelings, their emotions, what it shows, what they show, and what they hold as a message, is to have questions. Not when the emotion shows up, because in that space you don't have the clarity. There's no clarity, there's no clarity of mind actually, that you can process the feeling. You have to allow yourself to feel this feeling that shows up. That is the first rule. There's no way you can escape feeling, because the more you try to escape experiencing your feelings, the more these feelings get more intense, louder, and they try to attract your attention as if they were a child. If you dismiss a child once, twice, 3 times, what is gonna happen next? They're gonna come back yelling at you, trying to get your attention no matter what, and even embarrass you. Why aren't you listening to me? And in that space you have no other choice but listening to that child that screams to you, which is exactly what we need to be doing to that child without putting them in a position to scream, so we can listen to them. This is how your feelings are processed as well. If you're not listening to a subtle feeling of anger, of agitation, of happiness, of joy, you are missing out something from yourself that tries to catch your attention. And of course it won't stop there. If you dismiss it, if you ignore it, if you suppress it, it will come back louder and louder and louder. So in that space, just give your permission to experience the feeling. Number 1. First step, experience the feeling. Let it be experienced in the way it needs to be experienced. And I'm not talking yell at someone. I'm not talking to that extent. I'm talking express your anger, Like, hey, stop, this agitates me, this makes me angry. Communicate it. Don't try to suppress it, don't try to be the bigger person, don't try to feel like I'm all over that and I'm not gonna get angry anymore. That is, all of these are ways to suppress your feelings, to ignore them, to suppress them in a huge way, which is a huge mistake because we keep doing that sometimes. We want to be the bigger person, we want to show up more kind, or we try not to give any weaknesses away by experiencing the emotion, the feeling at that point. Listen to that inner way of communication within yourself. If any emotion shows up, experience it and express it, communicate it. Now, when you are on your own and an emotion comes up, the same goes as a process. Experience it. Don't lose yourself in it. Don't make it as your new label, this is how I feel from now on. Don't stay attached to any of the feelings that show up. And that goes for everyone, but when you are alone, you don't have to express it to someone else. You have to express it to yourself. And before we get to that first step that we already did, I would like you to do something now with me. Give yourself permission to feel and experience all your feelings. I haven't met one person in this lifetime, at least, that they haven't been suppressing one feeling, at least one emotion. And that suppression began in their childhood. It didn't begin when they were grown-ups. Obviously, it began from a parent, from a teacher, from anywhere. So give full permission to yourself to experience all your feelings. That is the beginning of the healing journey. That is the beginning of understanding your emotions and feelings. You may have heard a parent, that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate when you get angry at your parents. You have to respect your parents. Or it's not okay for you to talk back to me. You may have heard these expressions and you may have applied them on yourself, or you may have rebelled against those at some point in your life when initially it was taking place, but then that voice came back and you started suppressing the feeling again over and over. So give full permission to yourself to experience all your feelings, either you like them or not. Because I have seen cases where I don't like to get angry. I know, but it is one of your feelings and it is expressed in different ways. If you don't give permission to yourself to express it in the way it needs to be expressed, you are missing something out. You are discounting yourself in that way. So either you like it or not, give yourself permission to experience all your feelings. Each one of the feelings has a purpose. It has a way that it exists. It shows you something. Either you like it or like to admit it or not, it shows you something about yourself. And those parts of you that have been suppressed because of these feelings, it is high time for you to let them out, to heal them, to play with them, to entertain them, to acknowledge them. Moving on from giving permission to yourself, from getting to the step 1 of acknowledging and feeling and expressing, communicating that feeling that shows up, we actually release it. When I experience the feelings I have, I at the same time release them. I don't suppress them, I don't dismiss them, I don't ignore them. I experience them, so it is a way of release. I release something that generated a feeling within me. After the release, the intensity is gone, even the subtle feeling, it is heard and acknowledged. You start processing. You give yourself a break, of course, in between, and then you start, the processing starts as a way of understanding your feelings. And this process, step number 2, comes with questions. Okay, why do I get angry? Or why do I get overexcited? Or why do I get overly joyous? And when you get to that space of understanding and asking a question, why? Why this anger, the agitation, the sadness? Why this feeling? What does it try to show me? When you start being curious about this feeling of yours, why it showed up, how it showed up, to what level, and you can count the level that you feel it from 1 to 10, giving a 10 when it is an intense deep feeling, 1 or 2 when it is a subtle feeling. You can play with that so you can start creating a map of your feelings and how to navigate them. Then you get to a space of understanding why the feeling. When you ask these questions, don't try to answer them. Don't try to make an answer click to that question, because this is where most mistakes are done. If I'm trying to find a logical reason to justify my feeling, I've lost the game. Game is over. I'm done. The process is lost. It can't offer me anything anymore, because I made an answer, I created an answer, and I made it click on that question. So when you are open enough to ask the question and receive the answer, this is where you truly acknowledge and find the reasons of why this emotion shows up in your experience. And this is the most important of all. Don't try to find the answers. Ask the questions and let your intuition, your higher self, even your spirit guides to show you. You will be having images, instances of your life. You will be having clarity and the knowing or the remembrance of something. Why do I get angry about this situation repetitively? There's something for me to acknowledge. And usually, when we talk about negative emotions, they show up through the shadow self, because I don't feel respected, because I don't feel seen or heard, I don't feel acknowledged, because I don't feel that this person pays attention to what I have to say. That is enough for you to start to understand yourself. Because asking these questions and receiving the answers, allowing yourself to look back, to reflect, to see where the actual answer is, by asking more questions, receiving answers, asking questions, receiving answers. This is actually where the true growth takes place. If you try to make an answer click, it won't have anything to offer to you. It will be a made-up answer. We don't need made-up answers. We have plenty of those with the logical mind, ego mind, however you want to call it, it is true. But when you get to a space to actually receive the answers and ask more questions and receive more answers, this is where the true work, the true shadow work and inner work takes place, because you are being curious to understand yourself. It is as if you are working with someone else and you are asking them, why do you get angry? Why this feeling shows up? Is it only specific to that person, or the intensity and the level of the emotion you experience shows up in other situations as well? You are trying to make something out of the conversation. You are fully there reflecting. You are asking with true interest and with that curiosity of exploring, okay, let's see why this shows up. Let's figure out, what does this mean for you? What does it try to tell you? And why it keeps showing up, or why it showed up even once. And it's not about you wanting or not wanting the emotion, because that is like you say to yourself, I don't want that part of myself, let me cut it off. Let me stop it existing. It's like you say, my left hand is not as useful as my right hand, so let me cut it off because I don't have any use of it. Or it doesn't suit me for the time being, which doesn't make sense, does it? The same with your feelings. It doesn't make sense to want yourself to shut off on a specific feeling, an emotion that shows up. And the more questions you get to ask, it is exactly the space of unpacking the messages from your feelings, because your feelings hold messages and you have to be interested enough and actively listening to those feelings in order to unpack the messages. If the delivery guy or the postman delivers you some kind of envelopes and letters, shouldn't you be interested enough to take them back home, into your home, and wanting to open them and being in a space of opening them and unpacking them and seeing, okay, this is a bill, this is a letter from a friend, this is this is that, this is the order I made a month ago or whatever, and you are interested and invested in seeing what each package, letter, envelope holds for you. The same goes with your feelings. You have to be interested. You have to be present. You have to acknowledge that there's something there for you, a message, and something that gives you more knowledge of who you are and why this feeling shows up. That is the second step. And if you ask questions and you receive no answers, or you try to make up answers to fit in the questions, change the questions. There is no better way to learn what is a better question to do apart from constantly asking and finding different questions in order to figure out what this emotion, this feeling is trying to show you, to tell you, and why it keeps showing up in a specific situation. You won't be able to understand if you don't ask the questions. The questions are the way to understand the message, to unpack the message. So if you don't have any responses to a specific question, change the question. And you don't have to figure out an elaborate question of, okay, how do I understand my feelings? I have to think of an elaborate, amazing, wow question in order to understand my feelings. No, don't complicate things. Make it simple, as simple as possible. Why do I feel this emotion? What does this emotion have to tell me? And why it shows up in these specific situations? Is there something for me there to acknowledge? My inner truth, a piece of truth of me, of mine, that is hidden behind an emotion. It can trigger you to take a look at situations where there is some recreational trauma, something that is being recreated from your childhood over and over again, and that comes from the unconscious. So you don't know exactly why this keeps happening and repeating itself as a situation, so you are experiencing again the same emotions as you did then. But then again, when you ask these questions and you find yourself in that trauma from your childhood or situation, not necessarily as a deep trauma or a wound, but a situation that was created in your childhood, you will see that this is how you learned how to receive acknowledgement, how to receive love or attention, and unconsciously you may be recreating the same situation over and over again, because from your unconscious mind that means that this is how you receive love, and then you know mentally, logically, that this is not love. So how do you do? What do you do? How do you do? I'm good, and you? What do you do afterwards to change that? Just acknowledging that this is how it started, this is what it means in some capacity and level for myself, what it means in actual life, it is that I want to be receiving love and acknowledgement. So this is why I'm recreating a situation like this, to receive love and acknowledgement. Okay, let's take it now to a different situation. Step number 3. How do I actually receive love and acknowledgement? Not how I was trained to receive it through my life's experiences, through my experiences with my colleagues, my parents, my partners, later on and in my adult life, but how do I truly want to receive love and attention at this point of time. So we get to the building up positively from now on. This is number 3, step 3, where you actually start building up your experience as you want to experience it, feelings, with situations, with actions, with words from now on, which gets us to the question, how do you want to be treated from now on? When you are in that space of acknowledging that to yourself, everything changes, everything shifts. You get to the space of the co-creator. You have retrieved a lot of your power back. You have understood yourself on a deeper level. And it's not about blaming this person or that person or whoever was participating in that creation of how I understood or perceived loved. It's about finding your inner space where you can create from there and be the creator of your life. Having acknowledged that you suffered, probably, that you triggered yourself in experiencing that as a situation, so you can learn from that a lot more of how you want to be treated. Other times, going back to step 2, our feelings have a different message to show us, not just a recreational experience that we had when we were young, but even now in our adult lives. It is probably your shadow self trying to tell you to create boundaries. When you get agitated or when you feel that your worth isn't appreciated, then you're speaking to the wrong people, or you are expecting from the wrong people, or you have different expectations from the people around you, and you have to sit with that emotion. You have to understand why it shows up. What does it try to tell you? It is trying to communicate something to you. Your emotions are part of who you are. And in order to make the integration of who you are and who you aren't, in order to be in that path of ever evolving, you have to sit with your emotions, understand them, give them permission to show up, acknowledge them for what they are, without the need to put a label, oh, you're constantly angry, or you're constantly this, or you're constantly that. Forget about all of this. Also forget about shame and guilt. We don't do this kind of work with acknowledging and letting our emotions flow through us and ourselves to experience them with guilt and shame. If you try to do that with guilt and shame, you've lost the game. Game is over again, it's done. Start from a new level again, because it won't help you anywhere. It's not building up positively. And even with guilt and shame, you have to sit with those emotions and get into a space of understanding why they show up, where is the source, and how does it change your life, how has it created your life. Do they make you hold back from something you would truly enjoy in your life? There's a whole dynamic behind feelings. Excitement and joy and happiness are emotions that create fuel for you. They create the fuel to keep going. They create the feeling of wanting to create more, of being in that space of this is my jam. I'm gonna do this. I love doing this. This is what keeps me on this game, and I keep going and I keep going because I love feeling happy, joyous, excited, surprised. Fuel emotions. Emotions that we use them to fuel us up and to keep going. Anger, agitation, frustration. You have to sit with those. When do they show up and why? Sometimes you won't feel heard or seen or appreciated or respected, or sometimes you have to speak up, express, and find your voice to express what is going on. These feelings usually come from the shadow self, and we have to acknowledge that, and we have to work with them to understand it's not a bad feeling because it is anger or because it is perceived as a negative feeling, but we have to have a language of communication between us. This is why we call them negative. They are not exactly negative. Through anger, sacred anger, you can have so many changes, you can create so many changes in your life, where you claim your true power, you claim the power of your sovereignty, of your own wisdom, of what you have to bring on the table. And if you don't get angry, how will you change things around you? Anger has a purpose. It's not always a negative purpose, a negative connotation around that, but it serves you when you need to break free from something, to break through your limitations and expand. We know through our stages of spiritual awakenings that we have that stage where we are angry and unsettled and we want to do something else and we don't have the tolerance of what is going on, we are breaking through a level in that space. So all the emotions serve a purpose. If you try to clean them and get them off your clothes, for example, like something that gets you dirty or whatever, it's not okay, because you are trying to remove a part of yourself that is showing you something. If you tell me you can't get angry or you can't cry, there is a block there that probably started in your childhood. You have to sit with that. You have to allow yourself to feel angry. You have to allow yourself to cry, to give permission to yourself, because someone else took that permission away. I hope this makes sense. 3 major steps, but above all, give yourself permission to experience your feelings at their fullest, because when a feeling has been suppressed for a long time, it comes up explosively when it starts to be experienced again after a long time. And you get into that space of allowance. You have to allow yourself. Give permission. All your feelings are sacred feelings, no matter of your personal perception on those. Your personal perception needs to be worked out, not the feelings themselves. And you have to see the feelings as a compass that leads you to a deeper alignment, to a deeper understanding of who you are, what you tolerate, what you don't tolerate, how you want to be treated. 3 basic questions that I usually give to my clients at the very first sessions we have, for one reason. Because this is how you see your energy, your magnetic field changing, because you get to create your own boundaries of what you want to experience and how you want to experience it and why. And getting those feelings, understanding them, it's always a process. For me, it's always a layer over a layer over a layer, and the same goes for everyone. It's not just me, okay? But this is how it works. We unravel one layer of that feeling, we go deeper, and there is another layering that you have to pay attention to. The emotion, the feeling you experience the most is not the beginning of it. It is not the source of your feelings. You have to unravel the layers like an onion in order to get to the bottom feeling. If you get your feelings like that, okay, anger, why is anger showing up? Why am I angry? Because I feel not respected or rejected or abandoned or ignored. Another feeling, another layer of a feeling. And then why that and why that emotion? And you peel off the layers, you will find that inner space of peace, of calmness, where this is your innate space of being, your Zen state, your neutral state. But in order for us to get to that Zen state, the neutrality, that unconditional love and everything else, which seems sometimes like utopic, we have to explore the spectrum of our feelings, both positive and negative, the intensity, the layering that exists beyond that, the depth of the feeling, the emotion, and why this shows up, and how. If you are one of the people that constantly makes a joke out of a situation, or breaks the ice constantly with a joke, or when something seriously is discussed and you make a joke to sake of the uncomfortability and the vulnerability of the conversation, that is a coping mechanism. You are trying to hide away from something. And this is exactly where you find yourself, where you explore yourself. Why do you want to make a joke out of a situation? Why do you want to hide away? And from what? What is so comfortable to deal with? When it comes to my feelings, when it comes to being that space of vulnerability. Because vulnerability is one just thing, being okay with my feelings, no matter how I feel. When I'm vulnerable enough, I will share my truth. I will share from a space that it is okay for others to see me from that space, no matter how I feel. I may feel angry, I may feel sad, I may feel excited or happy, or whatever that feeling is. That is vulnerability. Vulnerability is the courage, the strength to show up with all your emotions in the way they show up without holding any judgment against them, without fearing that you will be judged because of them. And this is a position of strength, of power, not a position of weakness. Vulnerability is not connected with weakness. Decipher those two, because we have made some interesting connections in our minds about different situations, and that comes from a lot of generations back. Okay, yeah, they experienced that. We are at a different era, at a different time. A lot of things are fine now when they weren't before. Okay. And believe me, when you're doing this kind of work with your feelings and why they show up and how you can get engaged in a different way with your feelings, how to create and use them as a fuel for your manifestations, for co-creating the best of experiences for yourself. This is where true magic happens. This is where true alignment takes place. This is where ascension lies. It's about integrating, embodying our different emotions and feelings with the intensity they show up and with the reasons they show up. And there's always a reason why an emotion keeps showing up. And being in a space of reflecting on those will help you navigate yourself and understand who you are in your essence. I hope this process helps a lot of you. If you are already doing this, please let me know in the comments. If you have any questions on what we just discussed or I explained, please let me know in the comments. Your feedback is always appreciated and really valuable, because I see some questions that are dang on point, and I love questions because they trigger me to channel, to explain, to go deeper on something that I may have missed on the video, or whatever the situation this time. Please let me know in the comments if this process is simple to follow for you, because in my mind it is actually simple. 1, 2, 3 steps and we keep going. 1, 2, 3 steps and we keep going. And it feels simple, but until you start implementing at least once or twice, you won't see in actions how simple it is. It takes a bit of time and process and application of these things to make them, to use them for our benefits. I hope you enjoyed this. See you in the next video.